Good morning and welcome to the show, and thanks for waking up with us today. It's Monday morning, so you know what that means. We're waking up with Dr. Roman Nation from Nation's Best Family Healthcare in Lynn Haven, and now out on Panama City Beach as well. Dr. Nation, thank you for coming in.
Yes, sir.
You know, I want to give a little parental warning because here's a little topic that's kind of piqued a lot of interest,
yes,
particularly on the internet, out there in cyberspace. There's a lot of conversation going on about
Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn Jenner, the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner, and transgenderism.
Yes.
Is it like a bona fide minority that needs rights? And and what is his malfunction or
what's his malfunction?
I mean, is there a scientific reason for him wanting to do this?
Scientific, sort of. I mean, it's akin to the whole debate that you get on nature versus nurture when it comes to being gay or lesbian or bisexual. So there's been a whole growing population of people who have had, gay and lesbian tendencies or bisexual tendencies, and they've gained rights as they've gone along. That's where what was it, not more than 3 months ago, that whole thing was in debate in the media about whether gay marriage was legal or not.
Or legitimate or not. And
correct.
Whether it's a state's issue or whether it's something for the Supreme
or
Court
a
to
religious
decide.
issue. Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of people, we live in a very tolerant society. Some would say...
Depends on where you are.
Depends on where you live. Some might say even too tolerant. But I'm one of these people, I'm kind of a live and let live guy. It's like, hey, whatever floats your boat.
If that's what makes you happy.
As long as it doesn't infringe on my rights,
exactly.
I'm fine.
Yeah, and that's where the federal stuff got involved on that particular issue, is because they said, look, if you want federal protections, then the federal court has decided that gay marriage is okay and approved. So if you want the federal protections that go with that, then I guess that was the last thing that I heard was, for churches that did not want to approve gay marriage, then they lost their tax-exempt status.
Yeah.
Which I think is an okay thing, because if that's really what your moral beliefs are on the religion side of things, and that's perfectly fine, then you shouldn't get the the federal protections.
And I'm sure you will get a vigorous argument in some quarters regarding that, pro and con.
Right.
So it's really relative, I think, to local values.
And I think it's also more common and becoming accepted that there are a lot of gay and lesbian people out there, and it's okay. There was a lady I saw down on St. Andrews Park the other day that had she had a shirt on there. She was with her girlfriend. It took me a little while to put it together, but her shirt says, "I can't even think straight." And
okay.
And so I thought it was an amusing, play on words on how to do that. But it's becoming more acceptable in society for gay and lesbian people. So when you talk about transgenderism and gender dysphoria
and Bruce Jenner and all
those kinds of things, what you're looking at is the difference between have they had are these tendencies that started when they're very little, because when they truly are gender dysmorphic, you have boys that are very clearly embrace more female roles, okay, and then at the same time you have the same thing with girls who have the opposite problem, and we used to call them, it was a girly boy versus a tomboy, and that's kind of where that went to when they were little. Well, as that kind of goes on through time, I've treated patients that had that, where they were more of a tomboy and really thought that they wanted to become transgender. And as they matured, they kind of, dealt with it. And some of them have decided they wanted to go on and have the surgery and become truly sex reassigned. And others have actually become very appropriate with it, or I shouldn't say appropriate with it, I should say comfortable with the gender that they're in. And they're just more of a, they're actually, the one that I'm following, she's a girl, but is in a relationship with a boy. But wants to be reassigned as a male. So
it's interesting, and it kind of brings a Bruce Jenner thing to mind, where he's not gay, but he wants to be a woman, and it's I don't know, for a lot of us conventional guys, it's hard to wrap your head around this stuff. But I want to talk more about the science behind that. We got to run off to the local weather. Parental warning on this one. I'm talking about some really mature subject matter on this Waking Up with Don show this morning with Dr. Roman Nation. We'll be right back after your Waking Up with Don weather. Welcome back to the show. I'm speaking with Dr. Roman Nation from Nation's Best Family Healthcare. And we're having a very adult and interesting conversation here about Bruce Jenner, or Caitlyn Jenner, as he's known now, and whether or not there is real science behind what this person is going through. Is this a psychological thing? Is it a real medical thing? Does he have a gene or something that makes him want to be something else, or
genetics-wise, it's very, very hard to pinpoint that because they have not located like the gay gene, nor the the gene that says, well, my XY chromosome or XX chromosome says I'm a boy versus a girl, but then my mental capacity tells me that I'm the opposite gender. And really, it's funny because we were talking during the break, how this conversation makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Why does it make you uncomfortable? And really what it comes down to is what were you raised with? What a set of rules were you raised with? Most people, in our generation and older, were raised in families where boys do this and girls do that.
Right.
There is no crossing over. If you were a boy that did this, then you were, a girly girl, a girly boy. And then if you were a girl that did this, then you were a tomboy. And then you just had to kind of live with that or kind of shove those emotions away until it was more appropriate or acceptable in society to do that.
And there are people walking among us who have those predilections, I suppose, or predispositions, and they're good people, And,
you're right.
And so what? I guess is my
and that's kind of where it all comes back down to is that he's.
I mean, religious viewpoints notwithstanding, but still,
Correct. Yeah, but in the case of Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner type. I would look back at from as they were growing up, the kind of tendencies that were there, and in many cases, because he is of the generation that would have had a lot of those emotions kind of funneled away, just the way that gay people had to up until the last couple of decades,
right?
And so that's why those types of things would be coming out now. Versus, is this something? To me, the contrary theory to that would be, is this something that he's doing to create media attention? I mean,
well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Here he is, he's got this reality show.
Right.
And is he just trying to amp it up to get more attention for his career?
Yeah.
I mean, from Olympic athlete to reality star is,
Yeah, and then if you kind of look back at that as like when you look at on the psychological side of things, there is a set of pathology that requires people to constantly seek attention, like constantly do new things because it's the only way they can find self-worth.
Yeah.
So that's where you get at this constantly changing stuff, like, the Kardashians are in there. It's like, what am I going to do now to try and shock people to
What's next?
pull more attention onto myself?
Just when you think they've done it all,
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
got to come up with something more, I don't know, noteworthy or outrageous.
And you had a similar set of pathology in Marilyn Monroe. So she wasn't as outrageous as some of the stuff that's gone on now. But back then, by today's standards, it wasn't outrageous. But back then, it was.
This
some of the
instant
things
celebrity, this culture we have now of instant celebrity, I think it's harmful to people.
I think it ends up crashing at some point. I mean, because at some point you have to grow into the adult world and figure out, what, the world is not about you. The world will go on without you, unfortunately. And so if you're trying to grab your little piece in the limelight, you'll probably get it via one method or another if you really work for it. But it's not going to make you happy.
We were both Air Force officers at one time, and I remember I worked with this colonel who said the graveyards are filled with indispensable men and women. So you'll live your. I mean, someone else will come on and take your place at some point. So
and if you think you're indispensable, you are not. I mean, outside of very small circles in terms of family and those kinds of things, but outside of that, when it comes to work and all that other stuff, it all goes away. Somebody will take your place. So
being comfortable in your own skin is what's really most
that's
important.
really the key part to all of that is being happy with who you are and identifying what that is. If you're trying to just seek attention because you didn't you don't feel like you get enough, there's an internal journey there that needs to kind of get explored with a good counselor, which we have for those types of things. But the whole gender reassignment and celebrity stuff, lots of people get uppity about that because it's got so much media attention. Everything in the media passes. I mean, it's always sensationalism, and it's always something.
It's almost kind of sad on some level.
Yeah.
And Dr. Roman Nation, we are so out of time. Okay. It's not funny, but it's a fascinating conversation. Thanks for not clearing this up for me. But but it remains a mystery to me, and I think for a lot of viewers as well.
Sure,
and all we can really do is wish everyone well and hope he has a happy life. Be happy. Don't worry. Be
with
happy.
who you are.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dr. Aaron Shores from Spine and Neural Pain Specialists here in Panama City and up in Chipley. Dr. Shores, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
Yeah. I have a friend, a friend of a friend, who's going to get some shots because of an accident that she was in. and she has whiplash and all that. What type of shots do you think someone would get for whiplash? And in general, I guess.
Yeah.
What type of shots would you give somebody for pain relief?
Well, that's a good question. I think that depends largely on what their symptoms are and what their physical exam looks like. But in whiplash injuries, commonly there's soft tissue that's involved, oftentimes muscle, and there are some joints in the neck called facet joints, which are the two probably I find
and
most
we've
commonly.
looked at those many times on this show.
We have.
Mr. Bones, you had
Mr.
your
Bones.
spine in here. So,
yep.
yeah.
So those two structures are probably the most commonly involved. Sometimes if a whiplash injury can cause disc herniations and maybe pinched nerve symptoms, but true whiplash I find is mostly a combination of the cervical facet joints and some muscle discomfort or knots or trigger points in the muscle. So the injections that can be done for that, if it's you do an X-ray or an MRI and it comes back relatively normal, not an explanation for the patient's symptoms, then sometimes we would do a diagnostic injection to the facet joint, numb them up to see if the facet joints are a problem. Because the one thing I find in our practice is that an MRI or an X-ray doesn't always tell the story. It doesn't always tell us what's wrong with a patient.
So not all injuries are really visible.
Correct. Or at least not discerned by an X-ray. And the trouble sometimes becomes too, especially when folks start getting into their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. MRIs are often a little abnormal. You know, they'll oftentimes show a little bit of degenerative disc disease or a bulging disc here and there, and sometimes that's important, and sometimes it's not. So when it comes to looking at the facet joint, you have to look at the patient's report of their symptoms, what the physical exam findings look like, and then the doctor will make an impression on which joints they think may or may not be involved, and then you guess and go down and numb them up.
Let me ask you this: Can degenerative disc disease or some sort of arthritis that you might have in your neck, can it be accelerated by injury? I mean,
I think that's been well established that it can. But again, sometimes there are lots of folks walking around with degenerative changes on their discs. I have them, I'm sure you have them. But just because we see them doesn't always mean they're causing a problem. So I sometimes will use the comparison, you know, a rusty door hinge may look a little odd, but if it doesn't squeak and it holds the door on, we don't necessarily need to replace the door hinge.
right.
So we want to make sure that we're treating patients and their symptoms, not just the MRI picture. And that's where the diagnostic injection sometimes can be helpful, because if you numb something up, stand the patient up immediately, re-examine them, and they're better, then perhaps you're in the correct spot. If you numb up a structure that you think is the problem, you stand them up and re-examine them and they're not any better, then maybe you're wrong and you need to revisit the MRI and the patient's symptoms and reassess. So it's a little bit of a trial and error process, which is different than some other aspects of medicine, which makes it a little bit trialing and frustrating for not only the patient, but sometimes the physicians treating them.
So it really is trial and error. You'll give them temporary relief with a diagnostic injection. I guess it'd be some sort of numbing agent.
Correct.
You know, I feel good for 10 hours, you know,
Right.
and then you're back to feeling crummy again, and you know you hit the spot.
Correct. Yeah, diagnostically that's helpful. And then if we do hit the correct spot, then there are usually some other options that we can talk to the patient about to make that duration relief last much longer. But that process sometimes takes several weeks, or certainly more than one visit in many instances.
But suffice it to say, if you're experiencing neck pain, back pain, if you've been in an accident or had some sort of injury to your back, neck, or spine, don't mess around. Go see your doc, right?
Absolutely.
And then, of course, if there is something wrong, they'll wind up seeing you. I hope not, but
Thank you.
He doesn't need the business hat there.
That's
but
right.
No.
Understand.
Thank you so much.
You're
for
welcome.
coming on the show. Dr. Aaron Shores from Spine and Neural Pain Specialist here in Panama City and up in Chipley. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with life coach Stefan Longo, sitting here at the kitchen table talking about life.
You bet.
Stefan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you
my
very
friend.
much,
So
Scott.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
What's a good tip to kind of carry us through the week?
Well, what I'm going to give you right now is a book. And I want you to write down in this book right now,
Okay.
Don's Book of Awesomeness.
Don's Book of Awesomeness. Okay. All right. There's a lot of pages here. I'm going to have to
Yes.
be really, really awesome to fill this up.
I'm going to give you some instructions to help you.
Okay, so
Okay.
how does this work?
Okay, so now you've got your book of awesomeness.
Okay.
How are you awesome?
Well, how am I awesome? I don't know. I enjoy life. So that keeps me awesome, I suppose.
Perfect. You're a great host.
I'm a lover of life. I'm a host. Thank you. An adequate host, I would like to say.
No, I would say
Okay.
great.
Okay. Great host. Got that down.
You're easy to get along with. You talk to people in all sorts of diverse fields. Areas of life.
Yeah, I enjoy meeting people.
Right.
Okay.
So each day, I want you to think about your awesomeness and write it down.
Do I just make a list or do I have to explain it?
No. Whatever you feel.
Okay.
I think it's better if the more words, the better.
So every day I'll sit down and say, here's how I'm awesome.
And as you experienced that day.
Okay. So should I do this in the morning, end of the day, or?
You can do it either.
Whenever I like.
You can do it both.
Okay. And once I've done all this, what do I do with it?
You look at it and you look at yourself. But you appreciate yourself more now. Because you look at the things that you are really awesome about.
So if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you I have no problem with patting myself on the back and being awesome.
Well, and
yeah.
give your wife a book of awesomeness.
Okay.
And you write in her book, and she writes in yours.
Oh, that's a good idea. So people who may be watching this can say, hey, you know what? I want to be able to appreciate myself or my mate a little better.
Yes.
Everybody get a little book of awesomeness.
Right.
That's just start writing down the ways you're awesome.
That's the ticket. Because that way you get to love yourself more. And that's what it's all about, loving yourself.
And others.
Well, and others also. But the thing is, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself.
Stephen Longo, thank you for that advice. And I've got my little book of awesomeness that I'll be working on this week.
Great.
And I look forward to talking to you again about this.
You bet. Anytime.
All right. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Randy Akins, our official trainer for the Waking Up With Don show from 5L Fitness out at Tyndall Air Force Base and at Impact Fitness out there in Callaway. Randy, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Good to see you, man.
I mean, good to be seen. We're here at the kitchen table having a hot cup of Don, or Joe, as it were. And
good coffee, yeah.
we've talked about breakfast. Your
Right.
make-believe coffee tastes good, I know.
It's good, yeah.
We've talked about breakfast a lot, and nutrition on this show. What about dinner? I hear two ways about dinner. Some people say, well, you're going to be starving all night till breakfast. You should eat a pretty good-sized dinner. Then I hear other people say, well, you should really have a moderate dinner so you can sleep better. I mean, you create fat cells in your sleep, I suppose, if you eat too much.
You can create fat cells at any point throughout the day. It depends on what you eat at that point in time. So it's not about necessarily having a modest dinner. You really want to keep your blood sugar under control that late at night. So a lot of people think that you shouldn't eat, this type of food or that type of food. There's a little bit of truth in that, but primarily you don't want to eat foods that are really going to spike your blood sugar that late, because when your body secretes too much insulin, then you in turn store more body fat. So,
and also sugar will keep you up too.
Sugar can keep you up too. It doesn't keep me up. At the end of the day, whatever I eat puts me to sleep. It doesn't matter what it is. But I work a lot, so I mean that's understandable. But if you can focus on proteins and vegetables and slow digesting carbohydrates, then that will keep your body from being too resistant to your insulin and blood sugar.
What time should you eat? I mean, is dinner hour always 6 o'clock, or does it vary?
There's no certain time. And you'll hear people say, don't eat past 6 o'clock, or you're going to get fat, or don't eat past this time or that time. It depends on your schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? I've also heard don't eat too close to bedtime. I mean, if you have GERD or something like that, we have some sort of reflux problem.
Definitely that.
Probably shouldn't eat a giant meal and go right to bed.
You would definitely want to time that out, at least hour and a half, 2 hours before you were actually going to go to sleep, if you had to eat that late. But I'd say if you can get like 3 hours before you go to bed, if you absolutely had to eat that late, then that's perfectly fine.
And just a balanced meal, nothing in particular?
Yeah, I'd say some type of protein source, some type of vegetable source, and some type of slow digestion carbohydrate.
Now, I've also heard times a day. We've all been raised breakfast, lunch, dinner, 3 meals a day.
Right.
How often do you eat?
I eat about 5 or 6 times a day, depending on the day.
Okay.
So, and it's a breakfast, a snack, lunch, a snack, and then protein shake, and then I eat dinner.
Yeah, you got to feed the engine throughout the day.
feed the machine.
You got to
That's
need
it.
that. You need that fuel to keep your day going.
Absolutely right.
Because otherwise, we have these spikes in sugar and other things.
And that's what causes you to store more body fat. That's what causes you to crash and burn. It's typically spikes in your blood sugar that make that happen.
Yeah, and I'm famous for that.
Yeah, it's easy
I mean,
to
I
get,
amp up
yeah.
on coffee in the morning, and maybe I'll have a little tiny snack, you know, before I leave the house.
Right.
Never a real breakfast.
And then you don't have enough sustained energy. You get the quick energy from the coffee, but beyond that, you're out of gas.
Yeah, and by the time you get to lunch, you're like ravenous.
And then you eat it, and it's like,
And then, and then you go into a carb coma.
That's it. A noodle nap is what I call it. Yeah.
A noodle nap?
Noodle nap, yeah. Eat too much pasta, you go to sleep.
That's the story of my life. Randy Akins from 5L Fitness. Thanks for coming on the show and getting us smart about breakfast and nutrition.
Problem.
And we'll talk to you again next week.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see you guys next time. Have a great week.